My name's Derek, and I'm not much of a writer. I actually try to avoid it when I can, but something's happened to my best friend Matthew, and I've got nowhere else to go. I've always been a bigger guy. I was blessed with wide shoulders and a skinny waist. I've been on some type of football team since the Pee-wee years, all the way up to college where I am now. I know that'll set some people off immediately. They'll think I must be some sort of asshole or have a cocky, egotistical complex, but I swear I mostly keep to myself. I don't, or rather didn't, have to go through my daily routines alone. I had a roommate called Matthew. He was almost a direct contrast of me. Tall, skinny, quiet, insecure, but still an amazing friend to have. For years, I've been trying to get him to work out with me, to help build his confidence up. He's a handsome guy that just lacks a little bit of oomph to set him apart from the world. I knew if he could look at himself in a mirror and be proud of what he saw, then there would be nothing that could stop him. His chances of success in life made mine seem tiny in comparison, and I just wanted him to see that. But try as I might, he was always too insecure to go to the gym. He was always worried of looking weak in front of people, and usually lost his motivation mid-workout and fell into a depression the rest of the night. I brought up the idea of supplements and pre-workout to him, to give him that boost that he needed to at least get started. He was never against it, but never was fully interested either. Flash forward to mid-semester of sophomore year, and I noticed that he'd started buying weights for a home gym. He started setting up his bedroom into a makeshift gym and had a smile plastered to his face for a while as things came together. "What's gotten into you, bud?" I asked one night as Matthew unboxed some free weights from a rather large box. "I've been thinking about it, and you're right. I should try to get into shape a bit. This Q-tip thing isn't working out for me." The smile on Matthew's face didn't falter as he pulled out some decently heavy weights from his box. "You know, it might take a little bit of time for you to be able to lift those without hurting yourself," I said, while letting my eyes skim across the heavy metal plates in his hands. I felt a little pride welling up inside me at my friend's excitement. "Yeah, I know, but I've just bought this pre-workout online, and it's making me feel amazing. It's only been a few days since I've started drinking it, but it's really helping me kick my ass." Matthew struggled to drag the box of weights into his bedroom. He was already looking more confident in himself. "What pre-workout did you get?" I called out towards him as he crossed into his bedroom. "It's called Atlas. I left the can in the kitchen if you want to take a look at it." I glanced over to the sink to see a dark red container next to a shaker bottle of similar design. I made my way over to it while hearing the sounds of struggling grunts coming from Matthew's room. I let my hands grasp the container and examined it. The slogan, written in slick and shiny metallic black lettering, read out, "Atlas, drop the weight, break the chains," and depicted two worlds colliding behind a large and perfectly chiseled man staring upwards towards the lid. "Hey, Matt, where'd you buy this again?" I yelled out while inspecting the bottle in my hand. A red dust rubbed off onto my skin, remnants of Matthew's last use. "I got it online. It's a limited edition trial run. I managed to email my way into the testing group. I just have to send in some updates every week, and they'll send me a new bottle every month." "Well, let me know how it works for you. I'd be down to try some if they ever do a full release." It was after that night that I started to notice changes in Matthew. His walk was the first thing to change. His shoulders widened and broadened out. His walk was full of confidence, and he moved with a purpose. Whispers started spreading around campus. talking about how handsome Matthew was and how they never noticed it before. And I was hoping it'd get Matthew out of his shell. Instead, I think Matt heard those whispers but decided to work on himself and never acted on anyone's gaze. If anything, he started becoming more reclusive. He'd lock himself in his room all day when he wasn't at school. Shortly after that, he began to start taking online courses rather than attend lectures. Every day, I'd hear him from the other side of his door lifting weights nearly non-stop and groaning with a mix of pain and euphoria. Weeks passed, and I never caught a glimpse of him. Every once in a while, I'd ask from the other side of the door if he wanted to go grab something to eat, or hell, even if he was still breathing. He'd always reply with the same thing. "No, I'm good in here. I gotta keep up with my schedule right now. Maybe later." With the constant rejection, I let him be for a few months. Eventually, I began to notice that his door would be open at night, and he'd be gone. I assumed he finally hit his limit for the hermit lifestyle he'd chosen. When I'd wake up in the morning, his door would be shut, and I'd hear him grunting, with the sounds of metal clanking together in a perfect symphony. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to take a glance in his room and see what he'd done with it. So, one night when I came home from school, I made my way over to his blackened room. I felt myself tiptoeing, even though I knew he'd be out for at least a few more hours. I let my hand slide inside his room, scaling the wall, looking for a light switch. I felt the little familiar knob and flipped it on. What I saw confused the hell out of me. For starters, his bed was completely gone. The room itself was mostly empty without it, the only exception being several large stacks of heavy weights lining one side of the wall, while a large mirror took up nearly half of another wall. A thin exercise mat was placed right in front of the mirror. Dark spots spotted the mat like polka dots. I cautiously crept inside the room to get a better look. I approached the mat and crouched down in front of it and saw the black and red dots of fresh and old clumps of blood. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Something wasn't right. I let my eyes trail across the rest of the room and saw several more drops of blood in front of his bathroom door. I got back up to my feet and made my way to the door and slowly pushed it open. After flicking on the lights, I felt my jaw drop. I felt like I'd stepped into a serial killer's hideout. Blood heavily splattered the floor of the shower. Streaks of multicolored reds ran down to the drain in thick spirals. To make things stranger, on the bathroom sink lined bottles and bottles of makeup concealers, all the same color as Matthew's skin. I had no explanation for what I saw. It scared the hell out of me. I closed everything away just as it had been and went into my room, praying there was an explanation for what I'd seen. I waited in my darkened room until 4 a.m., when I heard the heavy footsteps of my roommate return home. He walked straight to his room and shut the door. I decided to give him an hour to relax before I bothered him. I didn't want to break his trust, but I needed to know what the hell was going on. Even though I was groggy from the lack of sleep, I tried to fall into my morning routine. I took a shower, got dressed, and prepped myself for an awkward little talk with Matt. I mustered up my courage and walked over to his door. I heard him groaning and grunting from the other side. I braved a straight face and lightly knocked. "Hey, Matt, can I talk to you?" I asked through the wooden frames of the door. "What do you need?" the voice replied. I hadn't heard Matthew in months. Whatever this gravelly and husky voice was, it only vaguely resembled the undertones of my friend. "I'd rather talk to you in person. I haven't seen you in forever." I grasped Matt's door handle and began to twist. I heard heavy footsteps sprint over to the door and grab the handle, twisting it back in place with such a force that I could have sworn the handle was being controlled by factory equipment. "Don't," I heard Matt growl inches from my face, only separated by a thin layer of wood. "I'll be out in a second. Just let me get cleaned up." All right, I'll be in the kitchen." I felt my knees shake slightly as I walked away from his door. Something was telling me that this whole situation was very off. I felt almost threatened by my lifelong friend. I made breakfast for 2 while I waited for Matt. I hoped the food could be a little peace offering between us. I had a seat at the table and began to scoop up some bacon when I heard Matt's door open. Stepping outside of his dimly lit room was someone I had never seen in my life before. His facial features were similar to Matthew's, but his body couldn't have been further from Matt's. This man was large, wide, and thick. He surpassed me by leaps and bounds. I could scarcely believe his shoulders could squeeze through the door frame on his way to the kitchen table. Every step he took showed muscles rippling just under his skin. His body fat seemed to be non-existent, and his physique was downright disturbingly powerful. "You wanted to talk?" the mat-like thing asked as it walked towards me. His expression didn't seem hostile. It just seemed insane. His eyes shone like white mirrors, reflecting any and all light in front of him with just a pinprick of a pupil visible dead center in his eye. My gasp slipped out of my mouth before I could speak. The man's head turned slightly in amusement. "Matt, is that you?" I asked, putting my bacon back down on the plate in front of me. Matthew smiled, his pearly white teeth parting his lips. His canines protruded past his row of perfectly aligned teeth. "New and improved," he smirked. His eyes settled on mine, and for the first time in my life, I avoided eye contact with him. His predatory gaze seemed to look past me and straight into my soul. I felt like who I was as a person was being sized up by a larger creature. Like my very essence was being threatened by this man. I forced a smile and braved a look at him again. "You look great, man. How'd you do all this in just a few months?" I asked, my voice breaking. I swallowed my anxiety down and tried out a chuckle towards my friend. "That Atlas stuff really works. Every day I can feel the difference in me. I hurt like hell some days, but it feels so good to push past my mental barriers." His needle-thin pupils traveled down to the small, cheap wooden dining chair in front of him. He gave a slight shake of his head, as if deciding the chair wouldn't be able to support his weight. "That's amazing. I've never seen a transformation like this. You don't even look like the same kid I grew up with." I tried to probe my way around my real question. "Are you really Matt?" "You just have to break the mind a bit. When your body says stop, you've got to tell it to fuck off and keep going. Once you do that, the little voice in your head changes. You can hear something egging you on to keep going. You have to listen to that voice. It's got its shit together. It knows the more you hurt, the better you feel. I watched the saliva trailed across Matt's lips. He quickly lapped it back up with his tongue and grinned. Well, damn. I was just making sure you were okay. Now that I see you like this, I guess I need to stop worrying. I gave an uncomfortable laugh. You know you're one of the few people I care about. Matt's tone shifted into a slither of words, shushed but dominant. I've been talking to the guys who make Atlas, and I think I could get you into the trial. I let my eyes meet his. They pierced into me with an unmatched intensity. I don't know, man. I'm enjoying being all natural, you know? In response to my answer, Matt leaned against the wooden table, arching himself closer to my face. I could smell thick layers of makeup coming off of him. Fuck being natural. God made things too damn hard for that path. I want you to feel the same ecstasy I do every time you tear your body down. Matt leaned so far over the table that his nose was just inches from mine. I couldn't make out the irises in Matt's eyes even at this distance. His eyes didn't look human. I'll think about it, I replied, slowly scooting my seat away from this muscle-bound monster. Matt gave a deep chuckle and squeezed the edges of the table in his hands. I heard the wood crack slightly under his grip. Suit yourself, Matt croaked, his grin widening. I held my breath until he slid off the table and headed back into his room. The wooden table had bent where his hands had been, revealing imprints of his palms and fingers. I was terrified from that point on. Within the same week as that encounter, I had purchased a pistol in case whatever that thing was that lived in my house ever got violent. I felt sick to my stomach, even thinking of using it against my best friend, but I didn't know any other options. He was so beyond my comprehension of strength that I felt powerless in my own home. To my apprehension, Matt seemed more and more interested in me. He began making food for me when I got home. I never saw him touch a bite of anything himself, and I couldn't help but notice every meal he made me was dusted in a red powder. Contrary to popular belief, I'm not dumb. I knew he was trying to feed me some of that Atlas powder. I'd decline his meals, saying I was too tired and that I had already ate. He never seemed upset at me for it, but a twinkle in his eye and the grin on his face told me he was toying with me. Matt wanted to break me. Eventually, just sleeping in my room at night had me paranoid. I felt my skin crawl as I lay in bed, and thick waves of heat flashes hit me while I was trying to sleep. After several unfit nights of insomnia, I found myself beating my body up. Literally. I'd slam my fists into my thighs and shoulders, angry at my own body for not letting me get the rest I needed. After days of personal abuse, I began noticing something strange. A red powder was leaking out of my air conditioning vent, staining the white walls of my room. Matt had put that pre-workout into my AC and air vents while I was away at school. I had enough. I was horrified of Matthew, but also angry. A primordial rage was boiling deep down inside me. Matthew had to leave. I walked right to Matt's door and busted it open. What the fuck do you think? I cut myself off when I saw what I saw. Matthew was standing in front of the large mirror in his room with a knife in his hand. Thick streaks of blood lined his body at every curvature of muscle. Scars and stretch marks plastered his body like canyons, covering him from head to toe. "Oh, Derek, I haven't put on my face yet," Matthew chirped up in a surprisingly pleasant tone. He turned around to face me, his face chiseled in from the knife in his hand. "I swear, with a little makeup, no one notices." Matthew's grin expanded across his face, blood pooling at the curvatures of his lips and trailing into his mouth. "What the hell are you doing?" I managed to mumble out. The muscles in my body began to tense up with fear. "It's been a week, buddy. I think you can try your first workout session. You just need to give your muscles some room to grow." He extended his bloodied arm with the knife facing me. His pupils seemed to spasm outside his control, as if they were contorting with excitement. With the last of my bravery from earlier, I darted out of his room, then ran to my gun safe under my bed. "Come on, Derek. You'll love it. It feels so fucking good tearing away at yourself. A new type of pleasure you can't even imagine. Heaven on earth." Matthew was yelling in a sing-song tone, as his heavy footsteps began to trail from his bedroom towards mine. I managed to unlock my safe and grab my gun just in time to have the large shadow of my friend cross the threshold of my room. I pointed the barrel towards him and felt tears welling up in my eyes. "Stop it, Matt, please. I don't want to shoot," I sobbed out, sweat stinging my eyes. "I'm not going to stop, Derek. I love you like a brother. A little pain now can lead to so much excitement in the future." He took a step towards me. Skin on his body began to fold over on itself, exposing the sinew and muscle underneath. His veins were a deep red and pulsated throughout his body in violent bursts. "Please tell me you're not Matthew. Please." I let my finger wrap around the trigger, prepared to fire. "I am, though. This is who I want to be. Atlas helped me realize there's so much more out there. A literal world of pleasure. Real, physical pleasure awaits us." He took another step with the knife tightly clenched in his vice-like grip. "I'm sorry, Matt," I said under my breath as I pulled the trigger. I hit the beast of a man's center mass. Curdled blood began to pump from his body, and underneath that, in the hole of his skin, was a black inkiness. A living void pulsating inside his body, unaffected by the bullet. "Ouch," the beast joked. The flaps of his skin began falling off of his body. Matthew used the knife in his hand to pull and tear chunks of flesh off of his frame, exposing more and more of the void inside of him. I didn't know what to do. I fired a few more shots at the creature, got nothing more than jeering in response. It was laughing at me. With one last shred of hope in me, I shot the creature in the eye. Its head shot back slightly, just enough to buy me the time to slide over my bed, around the beast and out the door. Even without us being in the same room, I could feel its eyes watching me through the walls. I ran out of our place and into my car with a speed I didn't know I had. I found the car keys in my pocket, hit the ignition, and sped off. I looked in my mirror and saw a large, black figure silhouette against the window of my home, watching me leave. I did what I could and called the police once I felt safe. I told them nearly everything, except the inky figure just below Matthew's skin. When they investigated our home, they found Matthew's blood everywhere in the house, along with several other blood types that might belong to some missing girls who disappeared recently. They still haven't found them, but I hope they turn up. I just pray Matthew didn't get to them in the same way he tried to get to me.